knowledge you're sharing. I'd love to know if you were to give advice to B2B marketers, the modern B2B marketer out there, what would you want to tell them in terms of customer insights? What should be important to them, should be on their roadmap now that currently is not? What advice would you impart?
Think about that a little bit.
So let me take a little diversion from it.
Sure, absolutely.
Because we're at the end here. And
Why not?
Sort of putting forward a point of view. And I think it is thinking about the buyer's journey differently, how buyers are buying. And I don't think it's a linear process. It's nonlinear. It's one that is, it's more sort of biological and it's changing and adapting than it is mechanistic. It's a science, and then you put a math equation in, you get the answer out, and somebody buys something. And so with that, I think we really need to think about the buyer's journey more as a network. And within that network, there are nodes in there. There are hotspots. There are just basic network theory of how things come together, where you can create influence. You become part of an environment of the network as a seller, and your way of maneuvering to create a buyer is going to be vastly different than sort of following some linear buying process. And while I didn't articulate that as clearly as I want, I really think it's going to be a whole different way of thinking about how people buy, because it's not linear, it's non-linear, it's not a funnel, it's more like a network of influence that's always at play, and every activity in that network changes the dynamic in that network that you need to listen, monitor, and figure out where you influence to create sort of that end result, the hotspot where the answer is they're buying from you.
So we're solving a different problem than we've solved in the past as marketers, and the notion of an analogy of network as the framework for solving that problem. I think that's an excellent point. Gentlemen.
Right. Well, I pick up on what Jim said. I think he's absolutely right, which is when you deal with very large organizations and how they buy, it is more similar to a network of nodes. But I'd also take it back to, crawl, walk, run, right? And so, in our sales, what we often find is there's one champion that helps bring the sale through, right? If you only started with understanding how that champion got involved at the beginning of the buyer's journey and came on through, and if you understood that, and then maybe you take a look at that and then layer on, more people. Well, who influenced that, champion? Who influenced the approver? And kind of layer that on. That might be, one piece of advice that I would have, right? So that we're not trying to boil the ocean, right out of the gate, right? Because some level of understanding is better than none. That would be my thought.
That's great.
I think my starting point would be to say it's time that as marketers that we took a seat at the big table and really looked at the business like an owner in the business, and saying, okay, if we're going to acquire customers, we're going to cross-sell, upsell customers, we're going to continue to enrich our loyal customers, what do we need to do for the business? Now, it turns out in marketing you have a lot of dials you can turn, a lot of tools you can use, a lot of techniques now that are very, very contemporary and new and different from what we used to use before. But when you frame it in the way of what do we need to do for the business, and then work your way back to the tools that are required to get you there, then the insights become really important. You can tie it and align it. If you start with the idea of I want the latest and greatest technology tools to try and give me some insight, you have no sense of how it connects with the business. It doesn't get very far.
Absolutely.